back to Breaking Black Podcast. You are here with your host, Tina G, and my beautiful co-host, Janine Hartmann. As you're aware, Janine and I are both performers. We're actresses. We both have modeling experience, and Janine's also a singer and a dancer. So today we're going to be talking about the starving artist's life. A lot of times we don't get a look at what goes on behind the scenes. So Janine and I are going to be sharing some of our experiences working in the industry as artists. A lot of times people identify, what we do, before we get our big breaks, if you will, as starving artists. Do you feel that that's an adequate description of the experiences that we have as artists? What are some of your experiences in kind of like maybe migrating over from a professional environment into your artistry?
Absolutely. When I first did modeling and everybody saw my pictures and ads, like everybody just assumed, oh, Janine, like you're rich, like you're getting a lot of money. And literally, like you really get more money the more years like you really work in the industry. So I'm blessed where I can act, I can dance, I can sing. So like I will go through avenues of acting.
This is next big dance move. Behold.
Welcome to Next Big Dance Move.
I always have an avenue of like dancing and singing where I originated, where I have connections. They'll be like, oh, we need like a backup dancer for so-and-so. And I'm like, I'll pick up some money. And then on top of that, like, not everybody knows that I have a master's degree. So if they need anybody like a teacher or like a teaching artist, like for a certain program, I actually taught choreography that was performed on the stage for a big program that's from the Broadcast Theater. So I was able to use my degree and my experience in the industry to navigate. But the best way is multiple streams of income. That's the best. See?
I can totally relate to that. When I was living in Los Angeles, I feel like, I don't know, there was just a lot of work there. And there was an opportunity to work even when like, let's say you didn't have like, you weren't booked on a show or you weren't working something regularly, you're not booked on a movie. There was just opportunity to work, in the background, working as, in stand-in, doing like miscellaneous photo shoots and things like that. And so I feel like there was just always something that I could kind of gravitate to that was in the artistry that I can maintain. But like, definitely I would say like living in other areas where, work isn't as prevalent. It was a struggle trying to have like a professional career and then being able to make time for like auditions and callbacks. You never know when they're going to come. You never know when you're going to have the opportunity to audition and try out for something. So it's like you're kind of planning your life, around unforeseen opportunity, right? And so it makes it a little bit more, difficult to navigate. And then one of the other things I feel like was like during the pandemic, there was like our work just kind of ceased for a while before, they started getting the protocols figured out and figuring out how we could still work on set. It was like very difficult to try to navigate as an artist. Like, were you impacted, during like the pandemic stages? Did you see an impact on the amount of auditioning that you were able to do or any work that you were able to book on?
I'm not gonna lie, I was actually blessed. I actually booked a lot during COVID. And not only did I book for my artistry, because I had experience with teaching, like I swear to you, because they were in demand of teachers. Like I would get emails from certain schools, can you come in, like, can you just like be this teacher for a second? I'm just like, oh, like, I don't know, should I? Like, and they were like, yeah, my family's like, yeah, do it for like extra change, especially during this time, because you don't know what's gonna happen. Like, COVID was very. I never heard Brooklyn so quiet. It was like a pin drop. It was scary a little bit. It felt like if you're from the city, it felt like you're living in the suburbs. It's like, hello. But I definitely filmed. And one of the amazing parts, sometimes when I got to teach, they wanted me to teach virtually. So I didn't really have to leave anywhere. I could literally do it within the safety of my home. And then on top of that, if I had, it actually tighten my skills with my computer and my lighting system, because that's when a lot of stuff occurs. And I was like, oh, okay, I have to make sure like my camera and my lighting is set up. But the teaching job, when I was like subbing or doing anything virtually, like artistically, it helped with that. So like literally I would go from one day, like, let me teach from this time to this time. And then, oh, I have some auditions. Let me do some self-tapes. Because I'm doing self-tapes, I actually booked. So I was, like I said, very blessed. I worked. And I think also because of how scary it was, it made me really want to like go applying for anything, just get some experience, some point. That this is the time where you really need to, instead of like just sitting back, like really go for it, try new things that you have never done before, you always wanted to do. Like, have you, like during COVID, like I know I was on the East Coast, but I'm not gonna lie, I literally just left San Francisco before that occurred. So how was it on the West Coast? Like, I know you said it like it ceased, but like, were you able to travel to other places? Was it more virtual?
In the beginning stages, in the West Coast, like there was just a lot of uncertainty with bookings, and like they were booking people to get tested, and like you would show up for testing on sites and they would be, you know, sometimes they wouldn't be organized properly, and like just there were like certain things like that were happening in the beginning. And I do feel like it kind of took a toll on just like the available projects during the pandemic. I was like, I saw a lot of people around me kind of like either losing their businesses, losing their clientele, losing their brick and mortars, just because they weren't able to manage business, the flow of business the way that they normally would. And I think for me, because I saw that impacting so many different people around me, I kind of was like scared of dealing with like an insecure situation. So I ended up actually getting like an additional job. And in the course of me getting the additional job, I went back to school. After going back to college, I actually ended up getting another job. And so for a while, I was like juggling between like multiple professions, which was insane. And I think now looking back at it, maybe that's why, like, I feel like for me during the pandemic stages, I wasn't really seeing as much work, but it's also possible that because I was a full-time student, I was working a job, then I took on another job, it ended up, you know, branching out and doing some more work. It's possible that I might have just been so unavailable. I was employed at a hospital during the pandemic, so I worked a lot during the pandemic. Whereas like other people were essentially saying, you know, that they were off, they had time off, like they were on TikTok, they were, you know, and so that might be the reason why my perspective is a little bit different, just because I was working in an essential field. But what I did notice was a rise in content creating. I noticed like during the pandemic, that's when you started seeing like a lot of celebrities like starting to take to getting on social media and like creating content on social media. You saw a lot of like the film actors and movie stars transitioning over into commercial. And then there started to be like a rise in content creation because a lot of people were at home. How about yourself? Like, I know you mentioned working as a teacher. Did you see like an influx, or was it the fact that there was a pandemic and there were so many changes in education that kind of opened up the space to you working on set opposed to working like, you know, for the school system?
Yeah, I actually was just like, this is not why I'm here. Like, this is just because literally school would email me because my name was in the system for education. And I don't mind helping people out because we're at certain times, and literally I would go to the schools and they would have, it's not like just one or two teachers absent, it would be like 5. Like, it was bad. It was really bad. Literally, I was just thinking, wow, could you imagine going to school and you're going to learn for science, and you have to study for the region, at the end of the year exams, and your teacher is absent for out of the 10 months, at least 5, like that's going to have an impact on the kids. Now, I did not really, like, I did like some for other subjects other than art, but I really had to I just, you know, wanted to help. And plus my family, my father was an educator. My sister is an educator. My mother was an educator. I come from a family of educators, so I respect that too. But I also was like, this is not my end all be all. Like, I wasn't thinking. Like, I would literally, I had an agent who would submit, and because I was self-taping, I was like, you know what, Thursday, I'm just gonna do my audition, submit it first day. And a lot of times I got called back, and a lot of times I got hooked. But the thing, like how you mentioned with that COVID screening, it would be scary because I remember I booked a Taco Bell commercial. It was Dolly Parton and Doja Cat, and literally every day we had to get tested for COVID, and we were there like for like a week or 2 weeks. And I remember like right before filming, one of the other performers, he got COVID, so he couldn't do it. He was there for the whole rehearsal, and that was just like, oh, that woke me up. I was like, oh my God, yeah, you know, you're really. That's why it's always a little scary. So that's why I made sure I was on tip-top health. Like, I was working out. I was making sure, like, let me tell you something. When you were on the train and somebody did it, the amount of people, and you know New York City trains, everybody was like, and it was crazy to me. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm still like that. Like, I was always kind of like that. Like, I'm the only one who wears gloves when I go on the train for food or like a little thing. I do not hold. If I hear somebody cough it, let me move. I'm gonna relocate to the next train car because they must get me sick. But literally, as an artist, like, that comes with part of being an artist. Like, when I went to school, you have to take care of yourself, not only your mental but physical being. And I have seen people who got out of the industry because, like, they had an injury. Like, a couple of my friends, one had a knee surgery. Remember, I booked something, and one girl was telling me, yeah, this is my first booking after a year. Like, I couldn't dance. I was out for a knee surgery, like, or tore my ACL or whatever. And I was like, yeah, you got to make sure. So, not like COVID, on top of it, you had to make sure you were support health-wise. And then, God, like, you were just saying that you worked in the hospital.
Working in the medical field during that time, and I was at a major hospital during that time, one of the biggest. It was definitely a lot of work. Like, I remember when the pandemic first started, it was pretty bare. But within maybe about like 2 to 3 weeks, you know, once they kind of figured out how to deal with the protocols, it was like we just were getting slammed left and right. So I didn't really take like a lot of artist work during that time, which is interesting. Now when I look back at it, but I've always kind of been in that space where majority of my life I've had to juggle like a professional job and then my career, and then also working as an artist. And I find it very challenging in the sense of like, if you're not working in a profession where you can, you know, take off when you need to, or, you know, call out, working in a profession like that, it's very different, you know, from working in our artist industry. Like, as you know, when you're working as an artist, you know, your environment changes a lot. You meet lots of different types of people. You're always on different types of sets and in different types of environments. And I would definitely say, like, you know, kind of during the pandemic, people were a lot more, I guess, fearful about being in certain types of environments. You didn't really get to go to as many shows. When you look at like off-Broadway shows and things like that, the movie theater experience changed and everybody started watching like streaming content. So I just kind of saw like that impact overall from an artist perspective of like just things like just really kind of changing around us. But like in terms of maintaining like, I guess, your profession and your artistry, like, how do you stay connected to like your creativity? How do you stay like motivated in the industry?
Well, I'm lucky. I'm able to work with other artists. And I think that's the reason why I like my day job is still connected with the arts, because that was my main goal. So I just wanted to make sure that, because I felt like if I were to have like another like a professional job that's non-art related, that I would kind of gravitate away from the arts, and that was like my biggest fear. So I was like, whatever job I do is going to be with the art. So there could be like a production or a program management or an arts program. So anything that's still related to the art. And honestly, I actually had fun teaching and seeing like little kids like performing and doing all this work, and it was just like, wow, like you reminded me when I was younger, and that's like I was like, oh, I really want to do this, I really want to perform, I really want to get into it, and see like other students like, oh, I want to be a makeup singer, like, or I want to do this, and I'm like, that's beautiful, and I love that. And even if they don't want to do that, the fact that they're working hard to go at it now at such a young age, that those tools are going to help them when they get older in whatever field that they change their ideas to. And let's be real, like we're all humans, we can gravitate to one side and go to another side. There'll be times where I don't really feel like dancing. Like I remember I didn't dance for like 1 or 2 years professionally. I was more so acting, like did this film, did that film, did that film. And then I go back to dancing. I was just like, wow, gotta oil these knees a little bit. This is a minute. But I gotta say, with being a performer and with like all these like bills and like especially with there's like an artist, there's so many hidden pieces people don't know about, like you got to be agent, got to be management, got to taxes and everything like that. I'm grateful for the support system that I have with my family. Because I remember I was talking to another artist and he's a director, and he was like, work was so slow for him, and he was like, thank God he had his spouse who was working like over their own business that's like a non-artist capacity. And it was just like, you know what? Sometimes it's okay to like lean or support on other like family members or your spouses during this time, especially rough time, because artists, like I see like life of an artist is really like a roller coaster. It goes up and down. It's never straight. As you can agree to, like it is never straight. So like having a great support system really helps, and I definitely lean on like my family, my sister, when it comes to like especially during COVID. And there'll be times where like I'm up and I help them up, but there'll be times where I go a little low and they're like, don't worry to me, we got you. So like it's literally complete. And I'm blessed with my family.
I think that's awesome, Janine. And I'm glad that you touched on that, because I think that like that's the thing I think about the most as an artist is like the amount of support that's available. I'm very much like you. We share that commonality that like my father was in education, my mother was in education, my daughter works in education. So I've had that all around me. So we're similar in that regard. But I feel like, they're a lot more analytical when it comes to like professional careers. And I don't have like other artists in my family. I mean, we have a couple of like singers, but there's not really anybody in my family that has explored like working in the arts. So I feel like I've kind of always been sort of like this lone wolf that's like working in the industry and like trying to get like my family to see like how important this is to me and how much I love and enjoy doing it. But it's been like, it took a really long time. Like I said, previously, I started as a child, booking my first commercial as a child, and my mom was on set with me. And I remember she was like, I could be at work today. It was kind of like one of those things where it's like they don't really get what it means to be a creative. And I remember it was like when I had this play some years ago, and I played 3 different characters in this play. And I remember my family came out to watch it, and they were just like blown away by the fact that like I carried 3 completely different roles in the play. And that was like the first time that they were like, oh, like we see what you're doing now. And it's crazy because I grew up in theater like my entire life. But like it wasn't until I had that show and family came out to support the show that they were like, oh, okay, we kind of see what's going on now. And then the first time that I had a screening at a movie theater and all of my family came and they got to watch me, in a feature film on screen, that was like the first time that they really kind of started like getting in my corner and championing that. And I love my family, but they just never, I don't think they got it. I don't think that they understood it. And I didn't have artist friends either. Like all of my friends were in the medical field, or, you know, they were teaching or real estate, you know, things like that. I didn't have any like artist friends. So I would meet artists like going out to mixers and going out to like award shows and premieres and things like that. And eventually I got social media, and that was how like I started to like kind of start talking to other artists and networking with other artists. But I never really had it around me throughout like majority of my career. So it's interesting that like, I don't know if your family are performers, because you mentioned that, you know, dancing and singing growing up and things like that, and you've kind of always been doing this. So I would love to know, like, is it because you come from a family that has a lot of different performers, or do you feel like their interest in your performing just is like, you know, based on your creativity or who you are as a person? I'm really curious about that.
Honestly, a lot of people in my family participated in the arts when they were younger, but I think I'm the only one that really pushed for a career. And like my sister, when she was younger, she performed on Broadway. Like, but she did it for fun. It wasn't like this was her end all be all. No, it was just like they were casting for like singers and actors and dancers in her school. So she did it. And because they did so well, like I think they got asked to perform it on Broadway. Like, so it was just like, cause I remember my mother, like she was really big. She would always come for her, my dad, and like my father is a big time dancer. Like he's awesome. So when I mean act like singing and dancing, like whenever we had like a family function, they were like, we would all dance and sing. But I was very shy, so that's why they were like shocked when I went into the art world. They were just like, oh, okay, Janine. But from day one, they were always supportive. They just didn't know, because I didn't even know myself. But like I was with you, see, like I didn't have that many friends in the industry. I had people around me who were crying for it. We were all basically the same, going into an industry that we really had no experience with, like we didn't know anything about it. But I was like, no, I am determined. And I see some people that I came into the industry with, like, who are no longer like performing anymore. They have like a non-artist job. So like I said, I have to say, like, I'm very blessed, and it's because like from the day one, when I was like, I'm going into this, you know, world, my sister made my first resume. So I didn't know what was. She's like, I Googled what an artist, actor resume looks like, and she made it for me. And then my parents would like send me money, like if I need like for headshots or like going to auditions. And I started. That's in San Francisco when I met you at the video shoot. So literally, like I was like literally on the ball, like just let the ball roll, and I was also in a different state from them. So like that was another thing where they were just like, I think that was also worried, because like when people hear about California, they either some people make it or a lot of people don't. They were just like worried, because it was just like it's shitty. But it's like when they started seeing me, they was just like, or even some people now like, oh, I just saw you in something, and I was like, you did? I was like, listen, they don't tell me when it comes out. I only know about the press parties and red carpets, and then after that they get to decide when this film or show or thing comes out. I'm just like, I'm the last to know. Like you're telling me, so like it's whatever. And on top of that, like where the industry is, like I'm just so used to it, like, and I get it. Like, but I would say like my family now is because they see how rock it is. They just want me to make sure like I'm good when I get older. So like that's why they're like, the only thing I would say that they press more on like multiple schools. Like yes, they're supportive, but it's just like make sure you're good when you get old. Like what I mean old, I meant like, you know, when you're in a cane like 90. You know what I mean? Like when you're like 80 years old. That's what I mean, because as we're seeing a shift, you know, before, like when people retire, they stay retired. I'm seeing so many people get retired and go back to work. So it's like, that's another thing where being an artist, you have to be mindful of. Like, unless you're here for like to go into like the end, like till you're like 90, like what you call it, Clint Eastwood, he still directed and acted in his 90s. He not playing games, but not everybody has that opportunity to. So you just have to really make sure, like, if like you have a big injury, or when you really get like older, like you want to perform, like you still go on sets for like long periods of hours. Make sure your eye vision is and your ears, like your hearing is on set. Like to make sure that you are living. I wouldn't say comfortable. I never want to be comfortable, but at least you have a lot of money for like a rainy day. Where you be like, oh, okay, I'm good, but I was like, let me get back to work. Let me do something else. But I'm like, okay for right now.
What would you say is the most challenging thing about being a performance artist? And then secondly, what would you say is the most like exciting or the most fun thing about being a performance artist?
I actually, the best thing, I love rehearsal. Like, I feel like I'm the only one that likes rehearsal. I like auditions because that's when I really I see that as like training. Like, like that's when we get to like really explore what's this, what's that. And a lot of times it's scary because you're so vulnerable. Like especially if you're going after like a scene where we have a lot of remakes right now, but if you're like doing a film where you're the only like the first person doing it, it can sometimes be scary, especially if it's like a big film or if it's like on Broadway. You're like, oh, okay, like this is a little scary, but at the same time, it's so much fun because there's no rules. You could really explore. If something is bad, like if you do it some way and somebody doesn't like it, it's like, you know what, I'll try a different way. Like I'll change the circumstance. I'll change the relationship. So it's like ooh, like it's like for me, like playing with fire. I love that. The scariest thing, it's like when it goes on forever and you never know if you have to call back after call back after call back after call back, and it's just like I just want to know if I got it, or like let me know so like I can start, because certain films or certain not just films like commercials or anything, they'll ask you. I don't know if everybody knows, but like if they're interested in you, they'll ask you to block out that day, or block out that week, or block out that month. But the thing is, like, they're not paying. Sometimes they don't pay you to block it out. So you're saving like a month or a date or a week, but like you're getting other offers like, hey, are you available for this time? And it's just like, I just blocked this out. It's just like the juggling game. Because I remember I got booked for something, for more than one project, and it's all filmed the same day. And it was just like, so of course I chose the one that paid the most because my money raised me too. But you have to do what's best for you. And the thing about those jobs is that's the one thing is like you want to do everything, but you can't do everything. You can't physically do everything. So I would say that's like the worst part. What about you, T? Like, are there any parts where you're just like, I just wish this didn't happen, or it did happen? Any of your favorites?
I would probably say, okay, so like I said before, my dream is to go to Broadway. Like everybody that knows me knows this. My dream is to go to Broadway, and I cannot sing. I'm going to be the first to say there might be some vocal ability in there somewhere, but I cannot sing. But I have seen numerous roles on Broadway that do not involve singing. And a lot of people don't get that. Like there are plenty of performers who work on Broadway that are not actually in singing roles. So for me, my dream is just to be on Broadway. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be singing, but I want to be on Broadway. So I haven't gotten there yet. I've been off Broadway, but my dream is to be on Broadway. And then I would probably say like my most fun or like my favorite job was like the job that I booked for Pixar. Like I had the most incredible like time just being like fully animated. I remember like in the audition I was like doing like karate chops and like making all kinds of like noises. I still listen to like my audition tapes sometimes because I find it hilarious, but just going in there and having that experience of like using my body and motion and like emoting different emotions in my voice was like really fun. And then I would probably say like, so voiceover I think I like really enjoy. I think I've died in 2 films. So dying in the movie was very interesting. Like I believe I've died in two movies that I've done. I know I was shot in one of them.
Another shooting in the hood. Another innocent victim. Will it ever stop? I doubt it.
It's like a very interesting experience, the makeup, prosthetics, and everything. And like sometimes I look at the photos and I'm just like, oh my God, like it was a scary moment. But I really enjoyed like people like being in the theaters and being like, oh, like the most challenging thing in all honesty, and it's like so simple. It's when you make the final callbacks and you don't book the job. Like you're on check available and you're holding and like you don't book the job. Had a major animation project that I went for twice in the final rounds on check available, and it got canceled during the pandemic. Then I had a major sports caster role that I went out for a major sports network, and it was paying like one of the biggest contracts that I've ever would have seen. I made it to the final, and I didn't get booked. And then it was another time that I had like a national, and they were deciding between me and another person. And like my agent called me like 3 different times, and they're like, you know, this is great. Like, and then next thing you know, I get that call and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, but like they released me from your hold. And it's like, in each time that I've been in those situations, like there's times when I've spoken with my agent and like they're only deciding between like me and another person. We're talking about closed casting calls where you're sent in by your agent, you're making it to, you've done your first callbacks, you've done your second callbacks, you're in your final stages. And it's like you and another person, and it's like you get the call that it's not you. And it's just like you wait for moments like that where you're like that close, and then you get that close, and you know the bottom's pulled out from you, or a project gets canceled. I've had that happen before too. And that's really tough because I feel like those are the times when you know you did what needed to be done, and it's like, but you still, you know, don't get the job, you know? So that's what I find to be the most challenging, I think, out of everything.
Yeah, that is hard. Oh, I just saw it, like I could just imagine. But yeah, those are the parts that really suck.
Well, I mean, we've had a great time with this episode. I want to thank you for tuning in to Breaking Black Podcast with your host, Tina G and Janine Hartmann. Please make sure that you stay tuned and subscribe to us on YouTube and all other music and streaming platforms, which are listed in the description. Thanks again for watching Breaking Black Podcast, and we will see you soon.